Welcome everyone to Mail Plus TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and this is our end of season top 5 for Star Trek The Next Generation Season 6. We'll be given our top 5 episodes of the season. We've sat and we've decided this between us and came up with a top 5. We'll also do our top 3, well, bottom 3 worst episodes.
Top 3 at worst.
Yes. So that is what we're going to do. So we've done this for every season so far, and the same problem happens every single time. As we get to the end of the season and we look at the episodes, and we struggle to remember some of them, particularly the bad ones. And I think that'll come up again in this, where we'll probably find that we don't have a lot to say about the bad ones. We just remember really not liking them.
Sometimes it's really damning though, because there's one of the ones that we looked at as a particularly, as one of the bad options. And it's sandwiched between 2 episodes that I remember very well, like beat for beat. I remember all of it. So it's not like a case of, oh, well, it was too long ago. I remember episodes, both sides of it. And this one, I'm like, I remember virtually nothing, like at all, which is not a great sign for any episode.
Yeah, that was rough. It was also wowing as some of the episodes that were in this season, because we had some breaks in the middle, not really by choice, but we ended up having some delays, and I was shocked at some of the episodes that were early on in this season. I thought they were a season or 2 ago at this point. Yeah. So, but that said, it's time to look at what the best episodes of season 6 are, so let's get into it. Number 5 is Shipping a Ball. And this is the Moriarty episode, seemingly his final episode of the show, where he holds the crew hostage because he wants to leave the holodeck. He's become self-aware enough that he doesn't like the fact that he's trapped in this computer room and wants to live and wants to leave. And the episode's full of these ideas of Picard and co trying to have to either convince him that he just can't, it doesn't work. And when it seems like he can, we get a bit of a dream within a dream style kind of reveal thing going on.
Yeah, the end is a little bit morally shady in that he's still in the holodeck, right? Like there's nothing they can do about that, but they've just let him think he's not, which is fine until he realizes that this is a lie as well, and then he's an ultra villain.
It's funny you say that, because there were some early parts of season 3 of Picard where I thought it was going to do that. I thought it was going to be. Oh, really? I thought it was going to be more, because they announced Moriarty was going to show up, and I won't spoil what actually happens in the show, but I was convinced at one point that this was going to be Moriarty's Wrath of Khan, where he got left in this computer simulation, like Khan get left on that planet, and he was going to be coming for goddamn revenge. He's going to have found a way to infect the real world, either through computers or whatever. But he's coming for Picard because he get left in the computer.
I think it'd be fair, because at the start of this episode, he's just annoyed that they've not been trying hard enough to look for a way to get him out. Because last time they were like, we promise we'll look and see if there's a way to get you out of there, and they never do. They just don't. They just kind of forget about it. And it was just a bit of an empty promise, and he's realized that, and he's not happy about it. Probably rightly so, because they did say they would, even though they knew they couldn't. And this time he's like, no, you're going to look for a way to get me out of here. You're going to do it. And the result is, let's just trick him even further.
Yeah. He tricks them, though, to be fair, and he also gets he gets a wife out of it. He wants a woman. Yeah. So, no, but I mean, it's a very good episode. I think you put a negative spin on almost everything you just said there. But it's very good.
It didn't sound negative coming out of my mouth.
I was just, it's. I think it's
no. I mean, well, okay. I'm very critical of the crew in this episode, but that is to the episode's. I think that's a good thing. I think it's showing our crew are not always necessarily the best people in the world. They're not the perfect heroes at all times.
Well, they're presented with a problem where there's no solution, effectively.
Right. But they're pretty flawed, and even their best solution in this has some caveats that may or may not have repercussions in the future. I mean, I'm guessing it kind of doesn't in the end, given what you said about season 3 of Picard not being that.
Unless something comes up in season 7 that I'm unaware of, but
right. So theoretically, it's not. But the idea that it could have those even worse ramifications than the situation they were already in here, like I like that. That's not a negative. Like for me, that was a positive thing that I was saying. Even if I'm being negative about the characters,
you've just got a way of sounding negative. That's all.
Yeah.
What
can I say? Most things are kind of shitty.
It didn't sound like praise. That's all I'm saying. But it's very good. That's shipping the ball. Number 4 is Relics. This is the Scotty episode where Scotty comes out of a transporter beam. He's been kind of stuck in all that time, and it's it's an episode about an old man realizing that it's not his time anymore. That it's not his ship. There's a lot of fun interactions between him and say Geordie because he's the engineer, and there's some jokes that are thrown thick and fast. But there's a really good couple of scenes in this one where he's kind of feeling useless, and he ends up in the holodeck on like a recreation of the original Enterprise, the bridge, and him and Picard have a great scene dealing with this. I think this is this the best like cameo episode of an original series character? Maybe.
I think it's head and shoulders above the Spock stuff.
Well, the build up to the Spock stuff was good. So the Sarek part of it was good, but yeah, once they actually got to the second part, it wasn't that great.
Yeah, it became that episode became, hey, look, it's Spock. This never did that with Scotty. It's obviously there's a little bit of that with, like, say, it's on the original Enterprise bridge, but it had a point to its story. It used Scotty to tell a story about, okay, sure, they use it as literally a man at a time, but it was very relatable to just, hey, sometimes you get old and you don't know all the same technology shit that all the kids do these days. Life sucks. And it told that story, and it just happened to be using an original series character to do it. You could have replaced Scotty with any other guest star, and this episode still functions. Whereas with the Spock stuff, you can't do that.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I think it holds up to me because obviously you had Bones have a cameo early on. I'm trying to remember if there was anything else.
Like episode 1, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the end of the first episode. He's got like the old age makeup on.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to remember if there's been anything else where it's like a direct character. I mean, Sarek had an episode before that 2-parter as well. That popped up. But I don't think there's been anything else other than that. So there's not a lot of competition, is what I'm getting at. But I think this probably is the best of them because of the way it handles it. It is kind of like part of the point of this is that he's not that important anymore, and he kind of has to deal with that fact and sort of accept it. So there's a nice sentiment into it. It feels like it's telling a story that you can only do with an old character, and I think it works. So yeah, it was good. Number 3 is Tapestry, and this might even be controversial having it only at number 3. I think it's good. I think it's very good even. But I will say that it's not like the top of the list for the season or the show. I guess in the same way that we kind of talked about oh god, what's the episode called? The one with the flute. I touched over Inner Light. There you go. About that's not being as great as the internet would have you believe. I think that this is better than that episode, I would say, but
significantly for me, yeah.
But I don't, like the rating on IMDb makes you go into it thinking it's going to be like an all-timer of the show, and I think it's a solid episode that explores Picard's character and has him sort of relive through some of his college years. Q sends him back to basically discover the moment where his life went on the path that it did and how he has to kind of make these same mistakes.
Or does he? And is it all a dream?
Yeah, you've got that open endingness to it, but it's a very solid episode. It's very unconventional because it is just Picard and these young people, and they're all pretending that Picard's young. He's not really, of course, or he is really, but we're seeing regular Picard play the role. So,
quote unquote, old Picard. With all of his experience and the person he is now in the body of the young adult Picard making all these decisions and that juxtaposition between who he was then and who he is now, because of course he's changed. Everyone's changed between that 20-30 year gap, whatever that is.
Yeah. So you got the idea of regret, the idea of the path not taken, but ultimately he's going to decide to go through with the same thing and potentially lead to his current day death, because ultimately the good he's done as a starship captain still is what the path he wanted to take. It still outweighs the romance that maybe he left behind, or whatever it might have been. So yeah, it's a very kind of like character affirmation episode, if anything else. And so really solid. Number 2 is Chain of Command Part 2. So this is the second half of the Jellicoe two-parter. This one in particular, I think, stands out of the I mean, both episodes are good, right? And we kind of just decided to only have one of them here just because we didn't want to take up 2 slots, and also it gets hard to sort of distinguish them a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of inherent. You can only separate them so much. It is still ultimately one story, so it's impossible to. As much as we're choosing part 2, there's a little bit of part 1 bleed into this in its own nature.
Kind of, but I think part 2 is absolutely the better half, because part 2 is the one where Picard is held captive by the Cardassians and is being tortured. And that part of this, I mean, obviously it's interesting seeing Riker clash with Jellicoe and all of that on the ship. That stuff's all really good, sort of like, you know, Starfleet politicking and all that, and Chain of Command. The stuff with Picard, though, where he's trying to not break, where he's trying to keep his spirit, and then the idea that maybe, just maybe, he was about to break, but it was just enough time.
And when they show up at the end, and it's, you know, he's not sure if it's real or not. If he doesn't know if he's already broken.
Yeah, sometimes some of the best episodes of Next Generation are just a scenario that lets Patrick Stewart have a performance that's different from normal. And this is it. In this case, it was the Tortured and Delirious, and you're going to tell me that there's, you know, not what exactly is true, because the truth is you're staring at 4 lights, and he keeps saying, how many lights are? He's like, there's 4 lights, and they keep torturing him because no, that nothing ends because you're telling me the truth. I'm trying to convince you, you know, to believe that what's right in front of you is not real, and that's the whole point of it. So it's very, very good.
This show has a lot of good actors amongst its cast.
Mm-hmm.
It does, but Patrick Stewart's on a different level to all of them. To be fair, he's on a different level to like 99% of all other actors in general. He's that good.
Actually, a bit of follow-up in this episode is that I have, since this episode, seen the 80s movie version of 1984, and this concept of the 4 lights and him being asked to tell the wrong answer, and that's the one they want, is a direct reference to 1984. There's a scene in that where I don't think it's lights, but the number 4 is involved. Like, he's asking, I think it's maybe his fingers. He's like, you know, he's looking for the wrong answer, and he's like, there's 4 fingers, and like, you know, zap, like you get electrocuted again. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, this is literally the 4 lights thing from Star Trek. This is clearly where they got their inspiration from. Unsurprisingly.
I mean, it is literally a classic. So, hey, why not steal from the best, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So between that and between all the Riker and Jellicoe stuff, you know, Ronnie Cox from RoboCop, pulling his weight, all that stuff's really
doing a great job being kind of shitty by the end. Not in a personality way. He kind of is that from the start, but just shitty at the job as well by the end.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing where maybe there's an argument for the coldness that he has, where he's pure, you know, by the book and all that, and he's very strict. But I think there's also the argument by the end of the 2 episodes that part of what makes a good ship's crew work is that they do become close, and that sort of looking out for each other lends to maybe not correct decisions by, you know, the Starfleet handbook, but, you know, ultimately leads to more success because they're willing to stick their necks out for each other, and they kind of need that. You know, that family aspect is actually important, even if no book will ever tell you that. So yeah, there's some good lessons to be learned. And number 1, and this might be an unconventional choice over
when have we ever followed convention on these?
You know, I'm just saying, I feel like those last 2 that we just mentioned, number 2 and 3, are the ones that most people probably pick from this season. But our pick for number 1 is Timescape, which was an episode just towards the end of the season, which was just really fun and inventive from a science fiction point of view. It's this idea of the time in the Enterprise and around the Enterprise has frozen. And it starts off with these little anomalies in the shuttle where they're sort of like realizing something's wrong, characters are losing time, and then it becomes this case of no, the entire Enterprise is frozen, but it's frozen mid-combat with a Romulan ship, so it's like, what's going on here? And then when they're able to actually walk around sort of in real time around the frozen time, they're like walking through the Enterprise and like all the other characters are all frozen still, and they're trying to piece together what happened, what caused it. And then there's a ticking time bomb element as well, just to make everything have tension.
Obviously, but it's essentially the stuff in a detective movie where they're going around the crime scene. It's that for an entire episode, essentially of them going around the crime scene, but because of the sci-fi nature of it, the crime scene is still active right now, and instead of solving the crime, they can prevent it.
Yes, potentially.
Yeah,
I think this is maybe the first time. Well, maybe not. Season 1 might be an outlier because season 1 obviously didn't have as many good episodes, but
yeah,
I think season 2 onwards, this might be the first time since season 2 where our pick for best episode is a fun concept episode as opposed to an episode that has like a moral argument in it. Because I feel like all the episodes we pick for most seasons are, Measure of a Man. Well, unless it was the Borg episode, I don't remember which one we picked actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, but it's
there was that. There's like the Drumhead. We probably
Drumhead. Yeah, it was definitely I think the pick in that season. I think we tend to go with the episodes that raise interesting ethical debates and Picard trying to argue for or against them. Those are the ones I think we tend to gravitate towards. I think it's interesting with this season. There was good episodes that had some of those ideas in there. We've talked about them so far. But it was the fun concept episode and the mechanics of how this worked in the episode that we ultimately went with.
Yeah, and we've typically had at least one or two of those in every top 5 that we've had for this show.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This show has pretty consistently delivered at least a couple of great ones of that style every season. Again, with the exception of season 1 and maybe 2, because it was a bit mixed.
Actually, and I want to say as well here, since we're on number 1, is that before we get to our worst 3, is that outside of those worst 3, I would say the majority of this season has a pretty good standard. Like, I don't think it has the high highs of previous seasons. It doesn't reach the same peaks.
It probably has a higher average though.
But the average is very, very strong because there's a lot of episodes that are in that really good, solid tier where they're not quite top 5 material, but they're because I was going down the list, I'm like, the Die Hard episode was fun, had a good comedy B plot. The episode where Riker's getting like worked on like he's been abducted by aliens, that was a fun, creepy episode. The episode where he thinks he's in a mental hospital, all fun, solid episodes.
Honestly, on another day, I could have argued for that to be in the top 5.
Yeah.
That's there's a lot of really good episodes in this season.
Yeah. So, yeah, really strong consistency. I guess where it kind of falls down is that there's a big Worf 2-parter which was just fine. It wasn't great.
Yeah, and then there was another Worf episode later on, which was probably the weakest Worf in terms of the Klingon culture stuff.
Yeah.
Worf episode that we've had so far.
None of them were bad, but none of them were like standouts either.
Yeah, it feels like there's a little bit of diminishing returns on that Worf stuff as of right now.
Yeah, that may be true. But anyway, that probably leads us on nicely, though, to talking about the 3 worst episodes. So number 3 of the 3 worst is Rascals, which is the episode where a few of the characters are turned into children and run around. Let's be honest here, this was Connor who... Because I said these are the 2 that are definitely making it. I don't know what the third one should be. And then Connor said the one with the kids.
I hate it. Like... with the very self-aware knowledge that this is me hating most kid actors, and I hate them in this as well. I just they just annoy me. And
also, I've realized what that last Klingon episode was. I want to dispute that that's the worst. I think the 2-parter was weaker than that because that one at least had that interesting stuff about picking the lie about the Emperor. Like
it did. It had the interesting
that
part,
was
but.
That was a really strong idea, though, I think.
Yeah, but the 2-part had Worf going around in a turtleneck
that's the
infiltrating another
argument.
planet.
That's the argument. The turtleneck. This is all just to say that I have nothing to say about Rascals. I just didn't have a counter pick, so I was like, yeah, have it.
I just it irrationally boils my blood.
Okay. Number 2 was Aquiel. And let's be honest here, we were looking down the episodes and we noticed this had a really low rating.
Is this the one that was in between the two? I remembered absolutely nothing about it for a good like 3 minutes. Yeah.
Yes, we had to look up what this was and sort of like realize it's this Geordi getting a crush on the woman who might have like killed people at a space station.
It's in between, Chip in a Ball, the Moriarty one, which we've already spoken about as on the top 5, so clearly memorable. Following the Chain of Command 2-parter, again memorable, and then right after it is Face the Enemy, where Troy's on the Romulan ship,
which wasn't bad either. That was still solid. When we read that Troy was going to be a Romulan, we thought, oh, this is going to be terrible, and it was actually
pretty good.
Yeah, some slight. Like, the way she just sort of is already there is a bit weird, but they kind of get into that, I suppose. But
literally, either side of it, you got Chain of Command, 2 parts, Ship in a Bottle, and then on the other side of it, you got that one there and Tapestry. I'm like, okay, I clearly remember everything around this. It's not a matter of it was too long ago. All those other episodes I remember, beat for beat, nearly perfectly, and then this one, I'm just staring at it. I'm looking at the pictures, trying to jog my memory. I'm like. There is nothing here. This did I watch this episode? I clearly we did, but I'm like,
yeah, we did.
Did we skip? Are we sure we didn't skip it?
Yeah, that's number 2. It's pretty bad. Number 1 though, just edging out on that, mainly because I remembered like laughing at how stupid it was a bit more. Is Man of the People, which was quite early in the season. Notably, the YouTube video of this did quite well because the thumbnail had a picture of Troy in a dress showing a lot of cleavage, and people joke about putting boobs in your thumbnail to get clicks, but like that was just an inadvertent one. I didn't do that intentionally. It was just this made sense as a thumbnail, and people clicked on it. So this is where she falls in love with a guy who's stealing life from his partners. So he's already like sucked the life out of, because if I remember correctly, and I might not because this was early in the season, I think there's like a woman with him who you think's his mother because she's so old.
It is his mother, yeah.
But it turns out this was actually his previous wife or whatever, who he slowly sucked all the life out of. And then he sucks a bit of life out of Troy, and she's got like a grey streak in her hair for a bit of the episode.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing. Just a dumb premise. I mean, I guess it was fun for Troy to play different because she gets to play this sort of more femme fatale style, like bitchy version of herself. So the actress probably had a bit of fun, but that's the extent
Troy
of it.
romance episodes are shit.
Yeah. There's not a lot of good ones, is there?
I mean, is this better or worse than the one where she gets impregnated by the alien light?
I actually don't know, and that's the question. That's a hell of a question.
I can't believe I just said that sentence out loud, and it's not a joke sentence.
Although, not to just completely pick on the female characters for romance episodes, Geordie's romance episodes are pretty much in the same boat, to be honest.
That's because all of Geordie's episodes are, hey, I fell in love with this girl I've never met. Let's be really creepy.
So, yeah, some rough ones. But... yeah, Man of the People wins out for worst episode of the season. So there you go. And no, what was funny is that we never really brought up the premiere episode, which was the end of the time travel episode where they met again in the past and all that.
It was good.
It was good, yeah, but it never really considered for top 5. And same with the finale, where there's some good stuff in it, and we're excited to see how it wraps up. But it never felt like a.
I think it's an episode that, especially this one at the end, lives and dies on what the second part does.
Yeah, so it's hard to judge.
I think it's a really interesting setup, and I'm intrigued. But I mean, if the second part just shits the bed, then this isn't going to age particularly well as a part 1. It doesn't stand alone well enough to be notable in its own right.
Yeah. And like I say, just a lot of solid episodes in between these picks. The second Riker episode, solid enough.
Yeah. And see, this is the thing. I know people say this is the last good season. 7's really, it's full of bad episodes. there's a little part of me that's being optimistic and hoping it's just they're bad coming after season 6. You know, the average just drops a bit. The realist in me is like, oh god, they're going to be terrible. Are we going to struggle to get a top 5 next season?
Oh, I don't know. I know people love the finale, but until the finale, it's like, oh, we've run out of ideas. We're just kind of killing time till we get to the last episode, kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe there's some gems in there. Maybe it's like, okay, it's down overall, but maybe there's enough for a top 5. We'll find out.
We sometimes go against the grain as well with some of the the episodes that we like, that people are like, this is terrible, and we don't get it.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, those are overall thoughts on season 6 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So let us know what you thought of the season in the comments. The next video that goes out will be season 7, episode 1, and then we'll be alternating between that and Deep Space Nine, of course. I believe until at least episode 10 of both shows, it is just back and forth, one to one. So we'll just be neatly swapping between them for a good little while before we have to like shake it up by following the air date order and doing like 2 in a row, 1 and so on. But that is the plan. So let us know what you thought of the season in the comments. Like, subscribe, give us your top episodes and all that down below. But yeah, get us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support the content and keep it all coming. And otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek. And unfortunately, there wasn't an episode to give Wesley Crusher in the bottom 3 because he'd have been on there if he was here. But sadly, we had to look for bad elsewhere.